Mayor Larkey.
Here.
Councilmember White.
Here.
Councilmember Powell.
Here.
Councilmember Pryan.
Here.
Councilmember Kraft.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Lawson.
Here.
Councilmember Richardson.
Here.
We have a quorum. All right, just a note that we're going to change the way we run our meetings. We're going to try this anyways. We're going to move the regular session to the front and the work session to the back. So we're going to, if you see a difference, that's what it is. So personal appearances. A, National Police Week Proclamation. Councilmember Kraft. Who's coming up? Are you coming up? Are they coming up?
Are you coaching?
Get all of them up here.
He can hold the mic if it's too
Get all of them up here. Wait a minute till they get up here. You might want to back up a little bit, Angel.
Hello. National Police Week Proclamation. Whereas in 1962, President Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the calendar week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas the members of Belton Police Department play an important role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of our community, and whereas it is important all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder. And whereas the men and women of the Belton Police Department unceasingly provide a vital public service. Now, therefore, Norman K. Larkey Sr., Mayor of the City of Belton, does hereby proclaim the week of May 15th through 21st, 2022 as National Police Week in the City of Belton, Missouri. We call upon all citizens of Belton to observe May 15th, 2022 as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or have become disabled in the performance of duty, and let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. In witness whereof, Norman K. Larkey Sr., Mayor of the City of Belton, has hereunto set his hand and caused the seal of the city to be affixed in the City of Belton, Missouri, this 10th day of May in the year of our Lord, 2022.
Thank each and every one of you.
Stay safe, guys.
Item B, National Public Works Week Proclamation.
Test. Proclamation, National Public Works Week, Ready and Resilient. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and service that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the city of Belton, Missouri. And whereas these Infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of the public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and in the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and soil waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of Belton, Missouri to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of the public works and the public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year of 2022 marks the 62nd annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, Norman K. Larkey, Sr., Mayor of the Mayor of the City of Belton, does hereby proclaim the week of May 15th, 2022 as National Public Works Week in the City of Belton, Missouri. We urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make every day to protect our national health, safety, and quality of life. In witness thereof, Norman K. Larkey, Sr., Mayor of the City of Belton, has hereunto set his hand and caused the seal of the city to be affixed in the City of Belton, Missouri, this 10th day of May, in the year of our Lord, 2022.
Thank all of you. Greg, you got to give a speech too. All right, C, Aaron Mills.
Hi, Council and Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to come just say a few words.
State your name and address for the record.
You got it. Aaron Mills, 113 Mill Street, which is convenient. I just wanted to say thank you guys for letting me come and speak, giving our 2 cents. We really appreciate all you guys do for the city as councilmen and women and mayor, and even seeing the public servants up here being recognized. We've had interactions with several of them over the last couple of weeks that have all been positive and educational and learning and helpful, so that's been fun. So we appreciate you guys. I'm sure your job is often thankless, and when you do hear from people, it's probably just something that they're upset about or angry about. And spoiler alert, I'm not upset about anything. This is my wife, Jen, and our 5 kids, and I've been a Belton resident for over 30 years. Our house on Mill Street is the only house these kids have ever known. And this community has been really great for us. We didn't realize we were a block away from the parade route. It's amazing. We really feel fortunate where we're at. We've been discussing local politics and how governments work and how infrastructure works and how bills get passed and all that sort of thing. And so we had an item on the agenda tonight that we were interested in and thought we could come kind of see how the process works. But basically, we've come today to ask you to raise the limit on the backyard chickens. Right now, Belton is currently at 4 chickens per residence, which I think is a great start, but I think we can do a bit better. Most of what I have to say is just anecdotal, just our own story and kind of what we have seen. I do have a couple of realtor friends in the city who have mentioned that when people are looking to buy a house, they sometimes steer clear of neighborhoods or parts of the metro that don't allow chickens, so it can be a value to people looking for home ownership. I've also heard from a number of residents in the Belton area how ticks have been really prevalent this time of year in pretty large numbers, and we haven't had any of those, and that's partly because of our chickens, I'm pretty sure. We really think of our chickens as our pets. They're quiet, they're enjoyable to interact with. Belton doesn't allow roosters according to our code, which I think is great. That keeps down most of the noise, so they are a pretty quiet animal, more so than any of the dogs in our neighborhood. Our chickens provide a couple of great benefits to our neighborhood. They do eat a lot of insects, ticks, spiders, beetles, grubs, things like that. And as an ER nurse, I'm acutely aware of infections and lifelong diseases that are caused by some of those bites, so it's fun to kind of be able to feel like we're doing our part as chickens to keep those disease-spreading insects down. They also have amazing poop. Make sure you get that in the notes. They're rich in nitrogen compared with other types of animal manure. They're great for composting. We use it in the yard and the vegetables and the flower beds, and it really is a wonderful composter. But the main reason that we have these fine feathered friends is for our chicken eggs. And we are able to collect, depending on the species, between 2 to 6 eggs a week from each chicken. And so right now with the 4, sometimes we're able to get a dozen, or maybe even if we're lucky, up to 2 dozen a week, which really has been a lot of fun for our family. The benefits for our family has been really great. Just having a live animal that they get to care for and nurture, care for another living creature, how to be gentle, how to feed, water, that sort of thing. Checking for eggs every day, even though we're not currently getting enough eggs right now, which is why we'd love to see the limit increased a few so we could have more egg production for our family. There's been a number of studies that show that the backyard eggs have more nutrients than the store-bought ones, and that they are supposed to be better for you. I don't know for sure, but I do know they crack in the bowl and look so much more colorful than the store-bought ones. And we made some cookies with backyard eggs, chocolate chip cookies with backyard eggs. If you guys want to try some, help yourself. They are legit and they're really good. And I think if there's enough eggs that people produce and they would want to sell them at the farmer's market, I think that dovetails in nicely with our farmer's market produce and communities sharing their harvest of their land and field, that sort of thing. Looking at some of the local communities, Lee Summit and Raymore both allow more chickens per residence than we do. I think it's great to keep some of the limits as far as no roosters, keeping the setback away from property lines, boundary lines, so you can keep the noise and smell and anything like that down. But really, we just don't have any noise. There's really no smell, and we've just really, really enjoyed them as our pets. So I understand being wary of backyard horses and cows, totally get that, but chickens are just an entirely different animal, so to speak. They're really much quieter than cats and dogs, provide nutrients, benefits to our yard, even our neighborhood, and provide a steady stream of delicious eggs for the families. But just want you to consider it. I appreciate your time. I know you guys have much more important things on the council agenda and item, but this is just something that we care about. So thank you for listening. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? I guess a question I have is, if you had the power to change it, what would you change it to?
That's a good question. I know with the cats and dogs being currently up until a nuisance, in my mind, this seems like chickens are way less of a nuisance in higher numbers. I'd love to see something like a dozen per backyard. Maybe cutting that off if the code enforcement officer says, yeah, that's becoming a nuisance and a bother to the community, that sort of thing. But easily could go in line with the dogs and cats, and just up to a nuisance, I think, would be an easy transition.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
We're gonna talk about this.
Yeah, later. B, consent agenda. One motion, non-debatable, to approve recommendations noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item to be taken from the consent agenda for discussion and separate action. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Regular agenda A, motion approving the final reading of Bill 2022-22.
An ordinance approving the Fourth Amendment to the Tax Increment Financing Contract between the City of Belton, Missouri and Menard, Inc. for implementation of the Southtown Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Plan as amended.
Present.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Lawson. Goff.
Aye.
Powell.
Yes.
Richardson.
Aye.
Pryan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Kraft.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Mayor Larkey.
Aye. Motion carries. B, motion approving the final reading of Bill 2022-23.
An ordinance of the City of Belton, Missouri, repealing Chapter 3, Section 3-24 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none?
Councilmember Pryan.
Aye.
Kraft.
Aye.
Powell.
Yes.
White.
Aye.
Goff.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Lawson. Aye. Mayor Larkey.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
motion carries. C, motion approving the final reading of Bill 2022-27.
An ordinance of the City of Belton amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2, Officers and Employees, Division 4, Personnel Code of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion?
Mayor, I thought we were gonna postpone this, but maybe that's,
Well, we gotta do that here, so. Were you gonna make a motion?
I make a motion that, I made the motion to go forward with it so we can postpone this ordinance, but I'll make a motion, we postpone it until we maybe look at this a little deeper.
have a-
Councilmember Clark, is there a date that you want to state, a date certain?
I mean, I'd
That's
like to
so
make it
it's staff.
soon. Our next meeting's May 31st and then June 10th or,
14.
huh?
14.
14th. I mean, I'd like to have a decision by June 14th.
So would that be a motion to postpone the second reading of Bill number 2022-27 until June 14th, 2022?
That is, yes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I mean, my discussion is, I think, I've talked with this with Sheila before, and I talked with the mayor. My problem gets into is just people, I understand that we'd like to change our agreement for people that are still in their probationary period, and I agree with that. But I think if, we have certain groups of individuals that get a right to, appeal their firing or dismissal, I think everybody should have that after that probationary period's up.
Any other discussion?
I agree too, and that, I think statements have been made that, we're one of the few cities in the, area that has a provision like this, and I guess I say, who cares, because, it's, to me, it's a benefit for our employees.
Anybody else on the motion to postpone? Seeing none, is that a voice or a roll?
Voice vote.
Voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item D, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-28.
It's the final reading.
Oh, sorry, final reading, my bad.
An ordinance amending sections 42-36 rates inside the city, 42-38 water rates for approved water districts or local governments, 42-39 rates for water consumed outside city, 42-296 sewer system user rates of the Unified Development Code of the City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Richardson,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes?
Pryan,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
and Mayor Larkey.
Aye. Motion carries. E, motion approving the final reading of Bill 2022-29.
An ordinance amending Chapter 11, Health and Sanitation, Article 4, Solid Waste, Section 11-106C of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Lawson,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes?
Richardson,
Aye.
Pryan,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
and Mayor Larkey.
Aye. Motion carries. F, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-30.
An ordinance calling an election on a use tax question in the City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councilmember Powell, or White, sorry. I was looking at him and saw you.
While I personally am for the use tax, I'm still very concerned about putting it up in August, and I just want to share that.
Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Isn't there another local city that is potentially putting it up in August?
Raymore.
Raymore.
No, Raymore voted last night to go in
Happening.
August,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else?
I'll talk. I'm in favor of it. I think education's the key again. I think we educated more of the citizens last time about the use tax. I still think we need to educate more. I just tell people I don't know how many millions of dollars we lost in the last 10 years, Sheila, but I know you know it, but it's a lot of money that we could have used to offset some other costs around here, so I will keep working diligently, like with the mayor, to get this passed. I don't care if we gotta go to every
Yeah, I
place again, we'll do it again, but
start sooner this time too, so. Anybody else? All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Motion for a second reading.
We have a motion for a second reading,
Second.
and we have a second. Any discussion on the motion for a second reading? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion approving the second reading of Bill 2022-30.
An ordinance calling an election on a use tax question in the city of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Pryan,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
White,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Aye.
and Richardson.
Aye.
Motion carries. G, a motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-31.
An ordinance accepting an additional Mid-America Regional Council MARC grant for services to individuals at the Belton Senior Center.
Present.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, information that we need to know?
I was just gonna ask Andrew, what's this money gonna be used for over there? Is it for services, or is it for transportation, or is it for the facility?
It's for services.
Okay.
Anybody else? Do we need to know anything with this?
I just want to make a note that this will be reimbursing expenditures that have already been made. So the sooner that this gets passed,
It was gonna get a double reading tonight, no matter what.
Okay.
I don't think citizens care if we take free money from Mark, do they?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't
Yeah.
think so. Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Motion for a second reading.
Second?
We have a motion for a second reading. We have and a second, sorry. Any discussion on the motion for a second reading? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion approving the second reading of Bill 2022-31.
An ordinance accepting an additional Mid-America Regional Council MARC grant for services to individuals at the Belton Senior Center.
Present.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
Councilmember Goff,
Yes.
Pryan,
Yes.
White,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
Kraft.
Aye.
Motion carries. H, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-32.
An ordinance approving the 10th Amendment to the Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Contract between the City of Belton, Missouri and Y58 Partners LLC for implementation of the Y Highway Marketplace Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Plan as amended.
Presented.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, information? Go ahead.
Mayor and City Council, David Christie is here, and he'd like to step to the podium and request an amendment to the Y Highway Marketplace TIF.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I was asked to just give you a report on what's happening at Y58.
State your name.
David
For the
Christie
record.
with Y58 LLC. I acquired a year and a half ago or so the Price Chopper property, not the actual grocery store, but the rest of it. To date, we're about ready to open the McGee's Car Wash that we're excited about. I purchased the Taco Bueno and signed a lease with Popeye's Chicken. So they're under construction to open that very soon. So hopefully in the next several months, Popeyes will be opening there. We've signed a lease with the other place. We'd signed it before in the shopping center, and when the cannabis store needed to be open, we asked them to move, so we're building a freestanding 4,500 square foot, the other place bar and grill restaurant behind Arvest Bank. So, and the plans are basically done and getting ready to be submitted for permit. So we're excited about that. We've leased maybe 8,000 feet of the vacancy that was there. We're getting ready to open Twisted Tango Yogurt, which is opening probably in the next week or 10 days. So we have 2 vacancies left in the strip center. So we do have the phase 2 land on the backside of the other place, and we're trying to figure out what to do with either pickleball courts or some entertainment for that. And it's really kind of buried between Arvest Bank, and now that I'm building the 4,500 feet, it's really better suited for some type of entertainment venue versus building a retail building on it. So, and then we have the pad next to Arvest Bank, which is fronting on Y Highway, and we're working with a coffee operator to go on part of that pad. So that's kind of a breakdown of what has happened there, and we're excited about it. We've been able to, I'm embarrassed to show up and say this is the 10th Amendment. I wasn't around for a lot of them, but anyway, we made a lot of progress in a short time. So we're asking you to extend the schedule to let us complete the construction of all these buildings and so on.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr.
I don't have a
Christie?
question, I probably just have a statement. I know Mr. Christie's done more in the first year, or the last year and a half with that property than what was probably done my first year and a half sit on city council. So I don't have a problem extending it because I see growth and I know there's stuff coming in and I know you're working at it. So I do appreciate what you're doing there.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Is part of this TIF across Y or just on the Price Chopper side of Y?
I believe it's just on the Price Chopper side of Y.
Okay.
It's just in that corner, correct?
I think, isn't was the gas station, I thought there was another partial that was pulled out of that TIF.
The gas station and what is going to be Popeye's Chicken are not in the TIF.
That's what I thought, okay.
Go ahead.
Does that settle up the $32,000 that we spoke about at the last meeting? Is that what you got?
Mr. Christie has paid half of that.
Gotcha. I didn't know what he gave you tonight, if that was
No,
part
no,
of it.
no.
Okay.
It was for the Chamber Golf Tournament, for the record.
Wondering. All right, thanks.
I'll miss Diane back to behind you, would probably appreciate that, so.
Anybody else? I just want to thank you for your continued investment in the city of Belton.
Pleased to be here.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for welcoming us with great arms and excitement. So,
Thank you, Dave. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. L, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-33.
An ordinance of the City of Belton, Missouri, amending Chapter 6, Sections 6-315 and 6-1086 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Belton, Missouri.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Should we wait?
You could, but at this point, as the mayor pro tem, you are the presiding officer in this meeting, and the meeting can continue if you would like.
Is there any staff, any updates on this one?
No.
All right, you're back.
Okay, I have some information to present from the last meeting. Staff was tasked to find out what neighboring cities do regarding food trucks and city events. I called and spoke with 8 neighboring cities in Jackson, Cass, and Clay counties, and it was split. 4 did not require business licenses for city events for mobile vendors, and 4 did. So that's why the ordinance is presented the way that it is.
If they required a permit, did they ask for, I mean, how much was their fees compared to what we've been charging, I guess is a question.
Sure. 4 of the 8 cities had flat business license fees. The other 4 were based upon gross revenue receipts, so the comparison is very difficult. But of the 4 that had flat business license fees, $70 was well within the range. 2 were $100, 1 was $50, and 1 was $30.
Go ahead.
I'm going to kind of paraphrase a KCUR segment I heard this week about a group of food truck vendors in Kansas City, Missouri, desiring a one-time use to operate in the city. They found Kansas City difficult to work with, having to get permitted individually. Is that what you found?
I have heard that from numerous staff and other people that Kansas City is difficult, so I purposefully did not call Kansas City.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, just from what I gathered in that segment, how we do it would be desirable to these food trucks and the folks doing that in Kansas City, Missouri. So I appreciate your time on this, and I think it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, at the last meeting, I don't know if it was in front of everybody or it was in discussion mode off record, but there was some question about the fact that why we would charge a full annual license for just a one-time visit to the city. So there was some discussion about having a reduced fee for a one-time thing. And then just like I don't know, going to the ballpark, if you go once, you pay that fee. If you want a season ticket, then you come back and you get a credit for your first game, and then you credited towards the season. So maybe you pay $30 for a one-time event, and then if you say, hey, I like it, I want to come back more, then you have to pay the $70 for the 2 or more events, and you only pay $40 that second time. I don't know if anybody's interested in that or not. I know that was some discussion.
Go ahead.
I agree with you. We don't want to run people off. We do want people to come here with their food trucks, and they already have county health licenses that they got to pay for. So you want to make sure and keep it low enough that they will come to your cities when you ask them to. And we did talk about it being free if it's a city function, and not if it isn't a city function. Is that changing?
This will change it to where everybody has to
Everybody,
follow this,
okay.
even city functions.
Okay. I just,
Well, they gotta follow the county rules, even if it's a city function too, though, right?
that's true, yes.
I would, I'm okay with lowering it. I would much rather lower it to a certain fee, if you want to lower it, than to do what you said, because it's a big complaint we're getting is it's a nightmare to come and do our business license process. So if you want to lower it, I would rather maybe lower it from 75 to 50 or something like that, but a one-time thing where they don't have to come back each time. So,
Just for the food trucks?
yeah, just for the food trucks, not,
Is that like a per year, Mayor?
yeah, it's per year, correct?
It's a July to July,
It's a July through June,
July through June.
and once you get it, you're good until the end of June. I did have 2 of the 8 cities say that they offered a temporary license, but both of those actually ended up being more expensive than an annual license. So when I spoke to those particular staff people in the other cities, I laughed and I said, so really, do you have anybody who does that? And they said no. Said it doesn't make any sense, because an annual license will allow you to do whatever you want to do. Those temporary licenses were only for 30 days or for 4 events. But if you came back, it would cost you more.
I think it'd be more palatable to just have one fee per year, but if it was low enough, it's not going to keep them from coming.
I'm okay with it too, but I think it does have to be a reduced cost, you know, maybe even a little bit less than $50, 35, 40 or something like that for a yearly thing.
last week somebody said, it might have been Sheila, that the $70 is to cover the staff for processing business license. And I know everybody that has a business has to get a business license. I think we're only talking about food trucks, not reducing business license
No.
all across the board. But anyway, I guess the question is, if we reduce it, does that mean somebody's going to lose their job or get less money, or does that cover enough? I mean, that's a hard back of the envelope calculation to make, but
I would not
are we
think so.
hurting anybody by doing that?
At this point, we're not getting business licenses for food trucks that are doing city events. So if you included even vendors that were doing city events, that would increase the revenues, and then decrease, even if it decreases the
We're
cost.
decreasing the
Yeah.
number, but increasing the volume.
But we're decreasing all food vendors, even if they show up at my house, right?
Just mobile food vendors.
Well, I know, but I mean, you've got mobile food vendors, but instead of getting the $70 from a lot of people, everybody be now getting $50. We'd only be getting $50, so it might be a trade-off, I don't know.
Go ahead.
I guess my biggest issue with lowering it is you have some of these people that show up every week, and you're gonna charge them $50, but you're gonna charge a local restaurant $70 to operate, so I don't know how that's fair. Just because they're a food vendor and they're mobile doesn't mean they should get a discount when they're here every week.
Go ahead.
Could you explain a little bit about the process? Oh, now I'm on. Could you please explain a little bit about the process of getting a business license for these individuals?
Yes, for mobile food vendors, or mobile vendors altogether, because we do have some retail trucks that have come in. The business license application is very similar to our general business license application. It's required to have a Cass County health permit. It's required to have a Heart of America fire inspection. And they have the business license application. If they have those items and they give them to us in the morning, we can process it in the afternoon.
So I saw there's a new snow cone place coming in. Is that a mobile food?
Yes.
It's permanent.
I did speak to that owner, and it's not permanent. It's a mobile unit as defined in our code.
May
So
I ask
yes,
you-
he's getting a business license, and he'll be here for a couple of months, but yes.
Man, we're sitting here arguing over $20, man. I mean, I'd just charge everybody $70 and make it simple.
Go ahead.
My one concern is most mobile food trucks are seasonal and not all year round.
Correct.
And that's my only, I don't mind the 70, but that's part of my thinking is that these individuals are only going to be able to operate 6 months out of the year.
Right.
They're not.
It's not the same as a full-time business.
On that, I'm the same way. They're only gonna be here certain times. You're not gonna be working out of them every day. I would like to make a motion to lower the cost.
Before, I would just note that, and Councilmember Powell brought it up, but whenever the city establishes a fee, it is based on the cost incurred by the city in processing the application. Under Section 67042 of the revised statutes of Missouri, whenever we look at fees, we need to perform a study of some sort, whether or not that study is done professionally or whether or not it's done by staff here, determining how much time it takes to process an application. So I think if the city council would like to lower the fee for mobile food vendors or seasonal whatever, the city staff would need to take a look at the amount of time that it takes to process those applications and determine whether or not there is a basis for decreasing that fee below what our brick and mortar businesses and other people that have received business licenses in the city, and whether or not it would make sense if it comes back that that the city staff is spending the exact same amount of time, whether or not it's for somebody that's coming in once or somebody that's being permanent. The city staff could look at whether or not there are streamlines that could occur in the mobile food vendor permit application that could decrease the amount of time that city staff is seeing. Because as Andrea said, they fill out the same business license as all other businesses. So we just city staff will need time to take a look to see whether or not there is a reasonable basis for decreasing the fee for these license holders as they relate to other permanent license holders within the city.
So with that comment, he makes a motion to lower. That's kinda out of order.
I would say that at
We
this
need a
point,
motion to instruct
yeah,
staff
I
to.
think mainly because the fees are set in the code, we do it on this, or schedule of fees. So if cities, or if, the city council would like for the city staff to study the issue, I think it would be a motion directing city staff to study and review, the applicable fee for mobile or for mobile vendors.
You okay with that?
I'm okay with that. My concern over this whole thing is I don't want to be.
Hold on.
Oh.
So you made a motion, we have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Never seconded it.
Since we had the original motion, does he need to rescind his original?
I believe that the mayor asked him to, and he nodded his head, but I,
Sorry, I missed your head nod.
That's all right.
Okay, so now I have a motion directing city staff to study and review the application fee for mobile food vendors. For mobile vendors, please,
We have
because
a-
it's not
we have
specific.
a new motion on the floor, and the old motion rescinded.
I second it.
I second.
We have a second. Go ahead.
My concern with having a cost of too high is you're gonna have a lot of mobile vendors that won't even wanna come to Belton. There's gonna be other events throughout the different cities. Why do we wanna go to Belton when we can go to other cities and not have a fee or have a reduced fee? That's my biggest concern.
I think if you're gonna
So-
not come here because of $20, I think that, get out of business. I mean, you got Chick-fil-A that shows up every week, so they get a discounted rate. I mean, they're here every week, and now they're gonna be $50 because they're mobile. I mean, you got the ice cream place that's gonna be here for 9 months, and now he gets a discount because he's classified as mobile? No way.
I disagree. I agree with you, Chris. When you have events here in this city and you want food trucks here, I've seen it over and over down at the winery. They don't want to come, but they only come down this way once, twice a year. It's not worth it. So you're gonna regret having a high price for them when you want to have a function around here and no food truck will show up. So
Councilmember Kraft.
You had said it's not just mobile food vendors, it's mobile vendors altogether, so that includes everyone who comes for Fall Festival and sets up a booth, or?
No, it's not your booth vendors. It's mobile vendors as defined in the code, so you have to have a mobile unit. So it's not your handicraft vendors. Those are not defined as mobile vendors. I only made the differentiation because we have had retail trucks come before, so I don't want to specify it as only food trucks.
Councilmember Powell.
Well, I don't want to prejudice how you do your study, but I would think a mobile vendor would actually cost more to process. I mean, a business that doesn't serve food is charged $70. All you have to do is provide that you paid your taxes last year. Whereas for these guys, you got to make sure they got in touch with the Belton Fire Code or fire department. They've got that you have to check to make sure they got in touch with the county and got all those paperwork. It seems to cost, if you truly have to tie it to the work that you have to do, it's more.
That process is more to do a permanent business is a process is more even above her, even for the codes and fire department. It's more of a process than the mobile vendors.
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I did mine online. I mean, it didn't take her any time.
I guess I
think we're
should,
about to find out.
I guess I should say initially.
Initially, okay.
Initially, the
Initially, you are
process,
correct.
initially the process is harder. That's
And the
my bad.
initial license fee for a brick and mortar is more expensive because there is more to it.
Okay.
The mobile vendors won't have the additional costs because there isn't building and fire inspections as the brick and mortars have a building and fire
But
inspection.
you gotta make sure they're collecting sales tax, license. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you don't look at my license and see it, cause I'm just brick and mortar. I mean, I don't have to worry about sales tax, they do. Making sure they're doing everything correctly. I mean, heck, even a county has a tax or a license that they gotta have, other than from the health department. I think the county maintains that they gotta have a license to operate in the county.
exactly. The county requires it too, so that's above and beyond what just a business operator.
I don't want to sit here and tell our local businesses that we don't care about them. We just want people to come in here once a year and take your business. I mean, if Linonia's is sitting here in front of you and you got a mobile Italian place coming in, I mean, I I don't wanna sit there and dog Linonia and let somebody come in here and try to take business away from them. I don't care if it's one day or one weekend. Charge them $70.
Anybody else on the new motion?
And that's the motion to study.
Study. Go ahead.
As he's saying Linonia, if they come in, they've already got a business license. If they have a mobile food truck, does that license carry over that they already have?
It does not.
Does not.
Because
So then they
there's
could get one
two-
and get a mobile truck and come up to the events like Main Street, Fall Fest, 150th anniversary.
I'm just talking about if
They
an
could come up
outside-
here and make even more money.
There's two separate health permits and two separate fire inspections that go along with those, so there's two separate licenses.
All right. Any more on the motion to study? Seeing none. All in, roll call or all in favor?
Voice vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Do I need to withdraw my other motion?
No, there's still the motion of the ordinance on the floor.
That's what I
This
s-
ordinance only doesn't change anything with the fee. This ordinance that's on the floor is to require mobile vendors to have a business license to operate in the city.
Okay.
So item I is, or 22-33 is just what you just said. It does not have nothing to do with the fee.
Nothing to do with the fee.
All right.
However, Mayor, adopting this ordinance would then make every single mobile food truck have to pay the $70 until after we do the study
This is the
and,
first reading. We can amend it next time.
true.
Well, this basically says, right now, it just says I gotta have a business license is what we're making them do.
Yeah.
And currently today, a business license is $70. After your study, it could be $95.
Or it could be 50. We don't know. Let's wait and see.
Or
So
75.
we need to do item I. So there is a motion on item I.
Well, in that sense too, though, is if it could go up, I wouldn't vote yes for it if it were 95. So maybe,
If we're doing a study, you just voted to approve a study, so. I mean, if we do a study and it comes back that says brick and mortar needs to be 95 too, I mean, we just authorized them to do a study. Now we're gonna say, oh, forget about your studies. Well, we did that with the citizens already. We don't listen to them either, so whatever.
So again, as Councilmember Clark pointed out, this would just be the first reading. All this ordinance does is require that certain mobile vendors in certain circumstances receive a business license, whereas currently ones that operate at city-sponsored events and then people that come to the Belton Farmers Market do not have to get licenses right now. All this ordinance does is require them to get licenses. I would also note for the city council that the next meeting is on May 31st. I would suspect that establishing the reasonable fee and determining whether or not there are any cost savings that could occur would most likely be able to occur during that time period. And if not, we will let the city council know, and you guys could postpone the second reading of this ordinance.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second for 22-33. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. J, a motion approving the first reading of 2022-34.
An ordinance of the City of Belton, Missouri approving a cooperative agreement between the City of Belton, Missouri and Mid-America Regional Council for funding the city's share of costs for Operation Greenlight Traffic Control System's closed-circuit television camera program in the amount of $2,280.
Present.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or information that we need to know? Other than what's in the agenda? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move for a second reading, Mayor.
Carries. We have a motion for a second reading. We have a motion and a second for a second reading. Any discussion on the motion for a second reading? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion approving the second reading of Bill 2022-34.
An ordinance of the City of Belton, Missouri approving a cooperative agreement between the City of Belton, Missouri and Mid-America Regional Council for funding the city's share of costs for Operation Greenlight Traffic Control System's closed-circuit television camera program in the amount of $2,280.
Present.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I had a quick question. When I was reading it, it looked like there was one camera on, have we chosen yet where that camera is gonna go, or?
Yeah, it's going 163rd and Markey.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Pryan,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
White,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, motion approving resolution 2022-59.
A resolution establishing the Use Tax Steering and Oversight Committee, appointing members of the committee, and establishing the duties and obligations of the committee, and setting forth the reporting requirements of the committee.
Present.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead.
I don't have my packet tonight, but, how many people were we putting on there? And how are we finding them?
This says
5.
5. I assume that you guys are gonna tell me who you guys want.
It's one from each ward and one from the city at large.
And
Are we having a council liaison? We having staff? We having?
They are to report back to the council their recommendations.
And I would note that with all committees and appointments established in the city, the mayor appoints with the advice and consent of the city council. So it's just up to the mayor and the city council to determine the membership.
Oh, sorry, I was. Go ahead, Angie.
Have we had people already apply? I know I was pushing some people who were possibly going to. Anyone know?
No, I haven't seen any applications.
I have one through an email,
Oh, okay, good.
so. Go ahead.
How did we determine the length of time on the board?
Those are the same for most of the committees in the city. 3 years with staggered terms. Or are you talking about the 1-year initial term for the Ward 4 representative?
Oh,
I mean,
that was fine, yes.
I mean, that was just going down the list. At large went
You're number
first.
4.
Ward 1, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I mean, the second year, they'll be put on as a 3-year term. I mean, they'll get that 3-year term
Exactly.
also, but you
Yeah.
gotta stagger them.
Exactly.
The idea, Councilman White, is that you don't want the entire board to turn over at all at once.
And I'm assuming we want an odd number in case there's a vote and.
You guys have anything? Rob, did you have anything?
Oh, no.
All right, any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
You want to do a second reading?
No, it's a
There's no
resolution.
second reading.
It's a
Oh,
resolution.
sorry.
City Council Liaison reports. Go ahead.
I've got 2 updates. The first is the Public Safety Sales Tax Oversight Committee had their first of 2 annual meetings last week on the 4th, I believe. The report is being written right now by resident Carolyn Allen. I appreciate her work on that, but I've seen the draft of it that we need to circulate. But revenues and expenditures received and allocated in accordance with the ballot language, and that the public safety sales tax meets all objectives according to the Oversight Committee. So you'll see that go around. And then for the parks update, there is a fishing derby for kids Saturday at Cleveland Lake. The farmers market is starting up the first Thursday in June. It'll be at Belton Assembly of God Church on 58. Summerfest is coming up on June 4th, and signups are going on now for the cornhole tournament, tractor pull. I think that's kind of the gist of what's going on with parks right now.
Anybody, go ahead, Angela.
From the celebration committee for the 150th birthday party, we did meet on Cinco de Mayo, and they wanted to make sure that I thanked all of council for helping provide dinner that evening. We had Snack Shack tacos and drinks. So they wanted to thank everyone for helping provide that. We also were able to get quite a bit accomplished during the meeting. We have plans for entertainment now. We have plans to be able to get everything signed now that we have our budget. So we appreciate you guys and us passing that budget. So we will have things going out very, very soon. We also have a kickoff event that should be up on Facebook. If it's not right now, it will be within a few days. So that people are going to make the number 150. And then we're going to do an aerial photo. So we'll want everyone to come out and join us for that. And that will be May 22nd. Thank you for the confirmation. I was going by memory, May 22nd. So all that information will be out on Facebook as well. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, Mayor's communication, I don't really have a lot. Played in the chamber golf tournament yesterday. It was a little hot, but it was a great turnout and a great time, and raised some money for the chamber, so thank them for that. So that's all I have. City manager.
I don't have anything.
All right. Any other communication from city council? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to enter an executive session, discuss matters pertaining to leasing, purchase, or sale of real estate according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.2, and to discuss matters pertaining to the hiring, and firing, discipline, and promotion of personnel according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.3. Discuss matters pertaining to negotiated contracts according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.12, and to discuss confidential or privileged communication between a public governmental body and its auditor according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.17, and that the record be closed.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Richardson,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
Pryan,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
and Mayor Larky.
Aye. Motion carries. We're gonna go back there now, so everybody don't have to
adjourn the regular meeting.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
It's just a voice vote since you're in.
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks,
Any
Patrick.
opposed? Stand adjourned. Call work session to order. Items for review and discussion.
Carnival.
You got anything? Oh. Item A, Belton 150th Birthday Carnival.
Good evening once again.
Oh,
I'm here to tell you that there will be a contract for a carnival coming to the city council in an upcoming meeting for the 150th birthday celebration. It's currently being worked on, but it's coming.
any?
But can I just,
At Memorial Park or where they putting it?
it is,
Yeah.
it's gonna be at Memorial Park, August 26th through the 28th. There will be several sessions. The Carnival Company expects the city to pre-sell 300 tickets at $15 a piece. So that equates to $4,500. And we will sell the tickets at City Hall ahead of time. If people buy them ahead of time, it's $15. If they buy them at the event, it's $20, and they'll be buying directly from the carnival at that point. And park staff will be there staffing the event.
Is that all you can ride for 15?
It's for like a 4-hour session. They're thinking the evenings on August 26th from 6 to 10 p.m. They're trying to decide what the first session on August 27th will be. The second one will probably also be 6 to 10 p.m. And then one afternoon session on August 28th, earlier than 6 to 10 p.m.
Will there be different bands for each date?
The ones that we are selling, it will be all of the same band, and they can pick whichever session that they want to attend, so they don't have to stress about what the weather will be like, and they'll just be able to pick whichever session. Not quite sure how it works, but I had Brian call them to ask while he
I was just
He's selling,
curious.
are we selling them here at the park or?
will be
Said City
selling
Hall.
them at City Hall.
'Cause that almost makes it sound like to me that then they could use the same one all nights.
I don't think that's real, but
Okay.
I'm not sure how they're going to prevent that.
Probably mark it with a Sharpie or something.
All right.
They're carnies, they're not gonna.
You'd think they'd have color coded for days personally, but
We confirmed, Brian was in my office today and he called them, and that they're all going to be the exact same. The pre-sold ones that we're selling are all going to be the exact same armband, and they will get the opportunity to pick which session they want to go to.
Go ahead.
This is a long time ago, but when I was 15, I worked for the park department part-time.
They even had parks.
They had
there.
carnivals?
They even had Memorial Park then.
they had like two
And
baseball fields.
my first job was to clean up after the carnival in the restrooms. Those restrooms don't any longer exist. They had to tear them down. But in any contract, we should make sure that the people coming that run the carnival have some responsibility for cleaning up, because I'll tell you, our park department will be working for a week to clean up after them if we don't have something that requires that.
In the current proposed contract and in the contract that the city has utilized with other carnival providers, they are required to clean up the area after they have completed.
You're not the only one that's had to clean up after.
All right. Any more on A? B, fireworks ordinance proposed change.
In your packet tonight, you have a draft proposal of a change to the fireworks ordinance. The portion that is being proposed to change is on page 2. It should be a red line. Currently, fireworks are regulated by the International Fire Code and the City Fire Marshal. Our current city code only allows the use of fireworks between June 28th and July 4th. Throughout the year, the fire marshal does receive requests to have fireworks displays. So this amendment would allow the fire marshal to approve professional fireworks displays outside of that week at the end of June, 1st of July. Specifically on deck, this would allow the park department to have fireworks for Summerfest and for the birthday celebration to have fireworks during the birthday celebration.
Guess we better approve it. Yeah, exactly. Anybody have anything on this?
Nope.
Item C, TNR Wayside Waves contract.
Tonight, we're talking about the Wayside Waves contract, and during our discussions with the Trap, Neuter, and Release program with Wayside Waves, we realized that our contract was with Wayside Waves was last in 2014. And so they asked to, and we agreed to actually renegotiate a lot of our services that we provide and then weave into this contract a trap, neuter, and release program. And we had researched our TNR programs with regards to feral cats with several other sources in Kansas City, and we found the pricing of $35 per feral cat was consistent across the board. But one of the things that we liked was to do it in conjunction with Wayside Waves because we already have a great relationship with them. They're only 20 minutes away. They're close to where our citizens can get pick up their animals. But it's also good for us for the animal control facility. Animal control officers to get there and get back into service. And so in regards to a TNR program, we've already had about 15 people contact the line that wanted to become feral cat managers, and we're probably going to be in the neighborhood of somewhere around 13 of them will be approved. But under this new contract with Wayside Waves, $10,000, we're thinking about $10,500 will be in regards to the TNR program. Eventually, that number will come down as we reduce the number of feral cats in the community. And the total of this contract, we think, is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $35,000. It's only going to go up $5,000. I think I've testified before in 2019, the animal control contract was about $45,760. It went down during the pandemic, $22,500 in 2021, and then 2020, and then this last year we had about 30,300. So it would be in the neighborhood of probably 40,000. Give or take, is what we're thinking, 40,800 total, and then eventually start going down.
Any questions? Angela?
So this program, the managers that you specified, they would be the ones doing the catching. Would they also be taking them to Wayside, or are they bringing them to?
Actually, the program will work like this. Is the more we've learned about this program, I think it would work out better. That we would actually put the traps out where these managers would help us identify the feral cat colonies. They would actually have a count on the cats, and then we would put them in specific areas, and they would help us, like maybe feed the animals and draw them into the areas where they would be trapped. And then when we take them to the facility to have the neutering happen, they would be released to animal control, and then we bring them back to the managers who keep them in their garage or some kind of safe space until they recover from the anesthetic and the procedure that's been done, and then they would be in charge of releasing those cats back out into the public.
I thought somebody else had a question. Seeing none, thank you. Item D, shelving purchase policy or police property room.
Yes. One of the things that we identified at the police department and have in this year's budget is a new shelving system for the property room. Previously, The only thing that's in the property room is metal shelves that you commonly see at Walmart or on the shelves at Lowe's or Home Depot. There's not enough shelves in that room, and we actually have stuff that is on the floors in different areas. We have a mixture of the drugs and also guns that sometimes are mixed in areas. They should be separated a lot better than they are right now. And so this shelving is going to help us achieve not only better storage, but also be able to separate guns, money, and drugs, and then those things that we have for evidence. And then along with this fits into our whole plan of a property officer that you approved to help not only be a good custodian of that property, but also get some of that property and get it out and get it destroyed or get it distributed back to whoever it belongs to. And so this shelving will help. The shelving that we've identified is on a contract, and so the pricing is fixed. And we believe that this is going to help us accomplish our goals that we set out in this budget year.
Any questions? Sounds like a good plan to me. Item E, planning and zoning process presentation.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. I thought this would be a good time to, oh, is it not? Okay. So since we have several, is that going through now? Yep. There it is. Since we have several new council members.
You got stuff up here on this screen?
Yeah, it's up.
That's what I was. Andy. Oh. Andrew, he's working on it.
He's working on it.
He's here, is this? Trying to eat.
Says no signal, so it may not be on. Oh, you're a tech guy.
We'll have to move it to my basement. Turn one of these.
Okay.
There we go.
See that?
There we go.
It's always a little scary. Moving the TVs. Okay. Since we have several new council members and myself, as new to the planning and development process, I wanted to go through just some of the approved documents that the city has for that guide planning and development processes in Belton. Maybe. There we go. So these are the kind of the planning hierarchy of the documents that we currently have adopted. The top one there is the 1992 comprehensive plan, and then the hierarchy gets a little bit more detailed as you go through the process. So I'll go through each one of these in a little bit more detail. So first is the comprehensive plan, which was last adopted in 1992. And that plan does guide the future growth of the community, and there's a number of topics that are addressed in that comprehensive plan. And then there's some related plans that have been adopted in the 2000s related to parks and trails. And the last time that there was any amendment to the comprehensive plan was in 2011 with the future land use map. So the future land use map, the one that's on the screen, is the most up-to-date version, which was again from 2011. That generally provides the general land uses across the city and for future growth areas to the south and the west. Unlike zoning, the future land use map is not necessarily always site-specific. It can be very broad, and you don't always have, it's used as a guide for land use and development decisions. It is one of the 12 review criteria for a rezoning application. So just because a project doesn't meet the future land use map does not mean that it can't be approved. There are a number of areas in the future land use map, for example, that are shown as commercial that have been rezoned for apartments. There's a number of review criteria, so this is more of a guide and not like a zoning map where it's more restrictive. And then going from the comprehensive plan, you get into a little bit more detail with district and corridor plans. So these are more site-specific and cover geographic subareas within the city. There's usually some challenge or opportunity that's been identified within a specific part of the city that led to the development of these plans. And so the two that we have in the city, we have the Downtown Design Guidelines Plan that was adopted in 2011, and then the North Scott Corridor Plan, which Carolyn talked about at the last meeting, which was adopted in 2014. So these plans inform the development of specific development standards, which are the overlay zoning district standards, which I'll get to in the next slide. But typically these plans, again, have identified specific challenges or opportunities in these sub-areas with the help of stakeholders that have been involved with the development of these plans. So those plans are taken and then developed into zoning overlay districts that provide further detail of how these areas should be treated going forward. They usually have specific development and use standards that are based on the adopted plans that were agreed to amongst the stakeholders and usually adopted by the city council. And then some of these areas will also include a more detailed future land use map, such as the North Scott Corridor. There may be design standards that are unique to the area that are adopted. And the overall guide of these overlay districts is the overall goal is to guide infill and redevelopment within these sub-areas. So as part of the zoning overlay districts, non-conformities are allowed to remain until the use, structures, or the properties are expanded, enlarged, or redeveloped. The future land use map determines the appropriate land use if the property is to be redeveloped, and those land use determinations have typically been based on location, accessibility, marketability, and economics. Building and sites may be reused, however, any non-building additions, such as new signage and fencing, still does need to meet the new standards. All redevelopment and new development is required to meet the district standards, and then incremental changes that are made through private investments will over time lead to the realization of the long-term goals that have been identified in the plans for these areas. So I have up there on the left is the North Scott Overlay Plan, which identifies all the properties that are covered under that. And then the lower right-hand corner shows in the pink, the blocks that are included in the Old Town Belton overlay. And so taking all of that, these plans or these overlay standards are reviewed in more detail as part of the development review process, which is a multi-step process. The first one is more of a broad level review related to the zoning. So first is typically, especially on the North Scott overlay, if there's any future development or redevelopment, it is required to be rezoned into the overlay district. And so there's a couple of questions there. Does that requested rezoning meet the comprehensive plan or the future land use map? And does it meet the rezoning for the district, the overlay district? If it does and the rezoning is approved, they would proceed to a preliminary development plan. In that sense, we start to review at more of a broad level if the proposal, the project can meet the development and the development standards in the overlay district, as well as any other requirements in the Unified Development Code. And then if that is approved, then we review a final development plan, which essentially looks at the final development to make sure that it does meet any overlay district standards and the UDC. So that is just kind of a quick summary of the development process, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead.
So if something doesn't meet those requirements on step one, but they felt like it would still be useful to the city, I mean, is there a appeals type process, I guess is what I'm asking? Is there something set up for those who are rejected
Yeah, so in these corridors, particularly in the North Scott overlay district, it specifically says that any land uses, it has a more, there are certain land uses that have been identified in there as appropriate. And it uses the term shall, so it has to meet that. Whereas elsewhere in the city, there are some areas where, from a future land use map, there may be more flexibility. But regardless of what it's zoned, it still has to be a use that is allowed in that zoning category, whether it be allowed by right, whether it be allowed with conditions or a special use permit.
Go ahead, Ron.
I'm not going to quiz you on this, but from looking at what you have at the 1992 comprehensive plan, do you think that needs to be updated? I mean, it's 30 years old.
Yes, typically comprehensive plans should be updated a full-size update usually every 15 to 20 years, and then amended at least every 10 years. So it is something that does need to be updated, and it is something that we are looking at, possibly looking into updating next year. So we will be working on looking at a budget for that next year.
Anybody else?
My only question is, on the slide before that, talked about the future zoning. Maybe a slide before that.
First slide there.
There you go, future land use map. Currently, what you're saying is that purple, what is that, industrial or something, or is that?
Yeah, the brighter purple is industrial, and the pink is a
But is that
business
land
park.
already considered industrial today, or is that just, is it zoned that way is what I'm asking, I
Yeah,
guess?
some of the future land use map that's on the screen, it does kind of blur the line between some of what is currently zoned, but also what the land was being used for at that time. And then it tried to identify what vacant, undeveloped land would be used for in the future.
I mean, I've had some people question me, why don't we just make everything agricultural? And then if somebody wants to put something in, they gotta come before us, because it's not zoned for commercial, and we get to actually have a say on it, and just said, I don't know. So, I mean, is there something we can change the zoning and everything, and anything that comes into Belton we have a say on?
That is typically what the rezoning process is for. We do require for generally any properties over 5 acres, a preliminary development plan, or a final preliminary development plan that does go through the review process, but properties that are smaller may only require a final development plan.
I just talk about stuff that's just happened recently, like we got a bank and a oil changing place coming in, which, I mean, I have no issue with it, but people talk about why did the city allow that to come in, and I said, well, it's zoned properly. Now, they bought something that was already zoned and tore it down and built it on it, but even like the old library location where Chambers is going, if we had that zoned agriculture, we could have stopped them from building, or we could, I mean, I guess I'm asking.
Well, if those uses were allowed in the base zoning district, unless they're allowed with a special use permit, it's really hard to tell them that they couldn't go there. If anything allowed in a C2 zoning district is allowed, there's not a lot of discretion in shutting that down unless it required a special use permit, in which case it would have to go through a special use permit review to determine if that use is appropriate at that location.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
And Councilmember Clark, I would note that legally, for property that's already been zoned, when you rezone it, there is a reasonableness standard that is implied in the legislative decision made by the council to rezone. And I would hazard to guess that there would be some unreasonableness in rezoning a lot from C2 to agriculture that is along a major arterial with commercial built up around it. And typically the city does not take on its own I don't think that there's been a city-initiated rezoning since I've been the city attorney here, and that is something that is pretty significantly uncommon to occur.
I know back in like 2000, 2002, we went through and got rid of a lot of the R2, just so we didn't, if somebody wanted to do an R2 project, they had to come before us. And it's just some of the questions you get asked, why did we allow a company to come in or something like that? I'm like, well, zoned properly, we didn't even, like, we don't even vote on it. So I just wanted to make sure people are listening, they hear this, so.
And I would also just like to point out that for assessment purposes, agricultural property is assessed at 12% of its value versus 33.3% of commercial and 19% of residential.
Well, Dave Clements always told me, if they meet all of the requirements, particularly starting with zoning, then you can't vote against it. I said, well, then why do we have a planning commission? So I did vote against the Caliber collision. Of course, it was 8-1. But the point is, there's been, I've heard of other examples in the past 20 years where everything was zoned properly, but Belton said, no, we don't want that to happen. And I'll give them offline sometime, the examples. But to me, the Planning Commission has a duty to plan with Matt's help, and then we have a final say in the matter.
I would note that for all rezonings, including when the property where Caliber Collision was zoned to C2 and when that use was designated as a permitted use in C2, the Planning Commission did approve that. And then the City Council approved it as well when it occurred the first time. So there are a lot of steps, and we're getting into some pretty minute both zoning and land use application discussion here. But you know, from just the general 30,000 foot view, there is a difference between zoning, which is what you do when you rezone or you include a use as permitted, and a land use application, which is administrative in nature, which is not a regulation. It's just viewing the proposed application against the already adopted regulations.
I only brought that up just because of the fact that what we did back in 2001, whatever, to stop multifamily housing, just being able to go and do whatever because it's already zoned. We just went out and rezoned everything R1 to basically, they had to come before us to do that.
And typically a rezoning from R2 to R1 would not be unreasonable in most circumstances, but like a rezoning from C2 to agriculture in the middle of a developed city would get to that unreasonableness factor.
Anybody else? Seeing none. Item F, Mark, aerial photography cost share agreement.
Every year we get a new aerial photography. Mark flies a plane across the city and take pictures of everything. We have signed an agreement with them to pay our portion of it, and it's based on the size of the city. So every city in the two-state area participates in this, and this will get us our updated photography for our GIS.
Any questions? Item G, Cartograph Solutions Master Software Agreement Renewal.
So we have Cartograph. It is our asset management system. We keep track of streets, equipment, and everything. And so with that comes a software agreement and renewal, and this is our annual renewal to keep Cartograph in our system.
Any questions? Item H, Heavy Duty Mobile Column Lifts Purchase.
One of the items in our capital improvements that was approved for this year was to buy a mobile column lift system. Basically, a lot of times if you ever bring your car into the garage, you pull onto a platform and it raises it up. The difference here is this is a mobile system that actually you roll it up to the tires, it hooks onto the tires and lifts trucks up into the air. So that way we can take it to different spots. If something's broken down somewhere, we can actually lift it in the air where it's at. I don't think we can do a fire truck, we can do ambulances. Fire trucks are actually maintained by another group that he has under contract.
But they do make them to lift fire trucks.
They do make them to lift fire trucks, but we're not going to lift any fire trucks.
Any questions? Hargis Lake Waterline Change Order.
While we're doing the work at Hargis Lake, if you've been over that way, you've noticed that we've torn up a lot of streets, putting water lines in. There's additional water lines that we left out originally, but now we're filling in the gaps. We're going to try and take care of the whole area while we're there. And so we're just adding some more water lines to that area while we're doing the work.
Go ahead.
So once you mentioned Westover, someone asked me, we're gonna repave that, right?
Yes, we are. We're going to fix the curbs and repave it next year.
Okay. They're doing a good job over there, tearing it up.
Yeah, they're grumbling a little bit already. When's it gonna be done? When's it gonna be done? So, anybody else? Yeah, wait till the water line program starts. Item J, wastewater regionalization presentation.
So one of the things that we started on this year was a wastewater regionalization plan. And I know some of you weren't here when we first brought this up, but what this is about a year and a half ago, Missouri Department of Natural Resources contacted us because a local community next to us, to the south of us, isn't able to control their waste. And all the waste from that community is ending up on the ground. And so they contacted me about, hey, would you consider regionalizing your plant to allow people outside the city to bring waste to you? And they said, well, while you're at it, the city of Peculiar also wants to connect to your plant because they're on a consent decree. So a judge has told them that they must make certain improvements to their city, handle their waste a certain way by a certain time before they get even steeper penalties handed to them. They also mentioned at the same time that the city of Raymore also uses a large pump at 195th Street to pump their waste from the south half of their city over the hill and back to Little Blue. So the city currently, City of Belton, does have part of our city is in a regionalization plan because we pump the north half of our city to Little Blue Sewer District up in Atherton, up near the Little Blue River by the Missouri River. The south half does go to our current plant. So as we started looking at it, they said we ought to really do a study, and I presented to council that we need a study to figure out how much waste should go to our plant and how do we handle all the waste for the future. So there's a lot of different areas, and people have contacted us over time who want to use our plant. So like I said, the south half of Raymore, it'd be much more convenient. They did a study several years ago to bring their waste to our plant. Northwest Peculiar actually had a non-binding agreement with us to bring some waste to us. There's several manufactured home sites south of town that would like to bring their waste to us. But then when we started looking at Northwest Belton, is that something we wanted to bring to our plant? Lock Lloyd also sends their waste into the state of Kansas, so they actually are regulated by 2 different states, and the cost is very high across the state line. We have different areas of the city that are growing, and we need to know, should we be looking at a regional plant? Regional plant means that it would be run by a regional group like the Little Blue Sewer District. And so we went and started pursuing the study, and I have a draft of the report. It's 77 pages long. I'm not going to read it to you tonight. When it is completed, no. Are you disappointed?
Are you heartbroken?
If you want to stay afterwards, I'm more than happy to read it to you.
You want to talk about going to sleep early?
So, but part of the, I had no idea where this study would take us, and it has been a journey to try to figure out how to, what can be done to regionalize this plant. From it, I've learned a tremendous amount of how the plant operates, and so basically, in order to regionalize the plant, as you add another customer, so if you added the south half of Raymore into our south half, the cost for those people to join would actually not just be placed on Raymore, it'd be placed on all the users of that regionalized area. When you add Peculiar, the cost for them to be added would be added to all the users into that area to operate the plant. And so we went through and looked at what are the costs of doing these different things. And the other thing that we looked at was, what is the cost for our plant? We have a maintenance cost to our plant, but if you notice, the south half of our city is growing. And even though people look at our population and say our population really hasn't changed with more than 1,000 people, but it actually has changed for our plant by thousands of people. And you don't realize it. The south half of our city is growing while the north population is going down, so the overall population is staying about the same. So the amount of stress that's being placed on our plant is continuing to grow and grow. So in time, and this is a 20-year out look at it, is that we need to do work on our West Fork trunk. And that's the trunk that you're seeing backups on, where we have a bunch of lines going through it. Runs fine until we have hard rainfalls, and that's why we've been doing I&I work there to stop the water from going in there. But that trunk line is going to need to be increased in size. We'll need to have a new influent pump station and force main improvements for our plant, and we'll need to have a bigger wet weather holding basin, just be able to hold more product as it comes in when it rains, so we don't actually discharge into a creek, which would be a really bad thing. Those improvements that we're going to need to make over the long haul are going to be about $29 million in order to keep our plant going, and those are just in those three items. We haven't talked about the plant being 37 years old and needing more and more work. We're doing a lot of work this year. We're trying to accomplish in like the next 5 years so we can keep the plant going. But then when we start looking at adding Raymore to the system, it comes down to, in order to tie them into the system, you're looking at about $11-12 million for them to pipe it over. And then, unfortunately, to do the plant, to make the plant big enough to expand it, it's $72 million to expand the plant to be able to handle their waste. Just the south half of Raymore. And then when we look at Peculiar is a hard thing to gauge because they have no development in their northwest corner. So you kind of have to gauge, is it one big plant that has like a big factory that goes in with 10 toilets? Is it 3,000 homes? Is it a big water company that's going to process a lot of water to you? But what we're looking at is $3.6 million to just build the trunk from Peculiar to us, and then probably another $72 million in wastewater treatment plant expansion to make that happen. And you're shaking your heads no, and I get it. The communities, they're big numbers, aren't they? Olson Acres, Oasis, and Crown Trailer are three manufactured home sites that really need to be connected to us. And that's about $5 million to do that, to get them connected. Now during all this, there's a whole bunch of discussion about watersheds, where the water should go. We're in 3 different watersheds. And so part of our city goes to the Blue River, which we always call the perfume plant. It's at 435 and Front Street. So when you go over that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The northeast corner of our city goes to Courtney Atherton plant, and the south side goes to our plant. And so depending where you're at in town is where you should go. You can pump over the ridges. It's a complicated process, but we can do that. But what we're looking at now, after we met with Little Blue, is increasing our connection, making a good connection at the Port Authority, which we talked about last week, to move more waste into that location, and then just keep what's at our plant basically where it's at. When we look at all these different things, so what it really comes down to in the future is, what are the user rates going to be? Because it's a lot of dollars and a lot of money. And so as we go forward, one of the discussions I have to have now is to go back to Little Blue and say, how would we actually pay for this? There's a lot of money through ARPA funds the state has that we could try to get. I'd highly recommend for the county to try to use their ARPA funds to connect those 3 mobile home parks, to get them all into our system so they're not placing waste on the ground, and then try to get some ARPA funds to eventually make a connection from the 2 other cities to us and create a regional plan. Today, when you start looking at the cost, you're looking at no less, the cheapest it could be would be additional $25 on everybody's bill for the next 20 years in order to improve those plants to make all 3 go to 1. When I first met with Missouri DNR, they told me, well, we have money to regionalize. So I got excited, thinking they must have $100 or $200 million to help us out to get this thing going. They have $4 million a year with no one city getting more than $2 million. So this is a 100-year proposition for them. You know, it's just not possible. You have to have all the money and do it at once. So at this point, it doesn't look like it's feasible for us to regionalize. We're going to look at how we could do more rates and how we could do this, and I'm going to let Little Blue really take the lead. If they're interested, they can make the rates work. But at this point, it's really come down to the fact that the cost is exceeding what the opportunity is. I mean, it'd be an exciting opportunity to make it a regional plant, make it a new, bigger plant, actually about 4 times its size. It just doesn't look like it's financially, the opportunity's not there. I will actually still work with the county to try to get them to get those mobile home parks connected to us, because I think that's a really important environmental issue. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is that a state requirement that has to be split? Is that a state requirement that it has to be split by all users? I mean, why not charge Raymore $72 million to tie in?
The way I understand it is that when you, and I don't know if it's a state requirement, but when you form a sewer district, everybody pays the same rate. So as the costs go up, everybody has to pay the rate.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I guess my question is, when you talk to the county about adding on to the sewer, what about the 187th and Mullen area?
He mentioned that.
You did mention that? You said manufactured communities, that's why.
Olson Acres.
It's Olson Acres.
Okay.
I believe that's what you're talking about, yes.
I didn't know what it's called out there. They've been wanting to come onto our sewer for the last 20-some years.
Right.
And they got a problem now too, so.
Yeah, I had one problem 20 years ago.
Where's our plant at?
205th and
Here.
Mullen.
You take Mullen Road, you just keep going out, when it ends, you'll end up in the plant.
Drive right into it. All right, anybody else? Item K, backyard chickens.
All right, this was based on a city council inquiry to increase the number of chickens allowed under Belton Ordinance 4-197. Currently under ordinance, as you heard in the testimony tonight, that the city ordinance allows 4 poultry animals, that means chickens or roosters, per acre or a part of an acre of such a residence, unless it's licensed in a commercial animal establishment with proper zoning and clarification. And so, just for clarification in regards to animal control calls from the police department, we get about 12 calls for service in 2020 and 18 calls for service in 2021 pertaining to chickens. And the reasons I highlighted in the memo that you have in your packet. And we did some research in regards to some cities in the metropolitan area. Kansas City, Missouri allows 15 adult chickens or 50 chicks. And that is about 300 feet from any residence, which is about 100 yards. And so you can see very quickly the number of chickens is often tied to the distance from the next residence or residences. Lee Summit allows 6 females only, 400 feet, which is 133 yards from any residence. And then Raytown, 4, over 90 days old, 100 feet from any residence. As you go down there, you'll find that some prohibit, like Raymore Peculiar has no limit, but it must be zoned AG, RE, or R1. And then Harrisonville, 6, female only, no rooster. And that is with written consent of all the property owners. Overland Park, no limit, but as a minimum of 3 acres and a special use permit. Leewood does not have a city ordinance governing chickens. And then Belton, there we are, 4 per acre or partial acre, 75 feet basically from surrounding residences. And so I think based on the testimony tonight, it was 4 chickens, average about a dozen eggs per week. And so even if you double that, it would be 8 chickens would produce 2 dozen eggs. And then therefore you can go up. It's actually a nice scale to, I think, if you're going to determine to raise it based on that.
So this isn't a new issue for the Planning Commission or the City Council. I did a little bit of research, and In December 2015, the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee met, and after reviewing and discussing ordinances from other Missouri cities, they recommended that that there be a text amendment to the UDC Code. So currently, our ordinance is in Chapter 4, but the Planning Commission actually held a public hearing on June 6, 2016. Some people came to speak. Some people were for it, for increasing the number of chickens. Some people were against. And it was such a hot topic that the Planning Commission ended up discussing it at their June 6th meeting, but continued the discussion to their July 18th meeting and their August 15th meeting. After those meetings, they actually sent to the City Council on August 23rd an ordinance. That ordinance was never voted on by the City Council. It was pulled from the agenda and was supposed to be brought back at a future date, and I guess this is the future date. So my thought is, because there was so much work by the Planning Commission, and I put all this information in your packet, it starts on page 116, but I thought maybe it would be a good idea, and of course it's up to you guys, whether or not you would like to send it back to the Planning Commission so that they can kind of look at what's going on now. They can hold a public hearing, and then they can make a recommendation to you guys as to whether or not a text amendment needs to be made.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for looking into this. I read through the work that they did back in 2016, and there was, it's interesting that they were trying to solve a problem and I think creating additional problems with the work they did. The gist of this was, what they decided was, let's say it's 6 chickens at one point, and let's make all chicken owners have to put up either a wood privacy fence around their side and backyards or a shrub or bush you can't see through. Does anybody, I know Rob, you have some chickens. Does anybody else on the council keep chickens right now besides me and Rob? Has anybody ever kept chickens before?
I eat them.
I like eggs.
All right. If you don't or you've never had chickens, gosh, do I have a lot to say about chickens. I really nerded out and got some quarantine chickens, and actually I got them from my neighbors, the Mills that were here tonight. They got some chicks and gave me 4. They're quiet. I mean, if you don't have roosters, and I ended up with 3 roosters in my initial 4, and I had to find new homes for them, which if you can find new homes for roosters, you could sell ice to an Eskimo. Nobody wants roosters. Pretty proud of myself for that. But they're quiet. They're not messy. Their poop is really great fertilizer, and most people put it into a compost and reuse it. In terms of what we do with the eggs, we only have 3 chickens right now because one of ours died in January. But we don't use as many eggs as the Mills, obviously, but among my neighbors, I have given them eggs in exchange for recycling their egg cartons for me to use again. I've given eggs to neighbors in exchange for bread. I've given eggs to neighbors in exchange for an antique chicken thing. I don't know. It was fine. They're great. They're great pets. They're low maintenance. They are quiet. What happened in 2016 is pretty weird. To me, it reads like one family, one couple, the man and woman, didn't like seeing their neighbor's chicken coop because they said it's unsightly. Difference of opinion, I think they're charming. Mine's actually really cute. I decorated it. It just seems like they did a lot of work to make more problems for people that want to keep chickens. I think keeping backyard chickens is great for my family. Like the Mills said, I would never live in Raymore if I couldn't have my chickens. I mean, I don't want to live in Raymore anyway, but I think it's kind of ridiculous you can't have chickens over there. I don't know. I don't like to beat my chest and say this is a freedom we're entitled to, but if you can have an unlimited number of dogs and cats in our city, up until the point it's a nuisance, I think having a dozen chickens is within the scope of reasonable given the lot sizes we have. I don't want a dozen chickens. They also cycle out with age where they'll stop laying after maybe 3 years, and then they'll live about 8 years. So you got 5 years of non-laying chickens if you could kind of cycle through. I'm getting really into chicken math here. That would be great. So I've gotten off track, but I would like to see it increase to 12. I'd be happy to introduce you to Chuck, Vader, or Goldie. They're really sweet, and they lay me eggs, so I guess that's where I'll end this.
Well, I thought it was interesting too that Chief Lyons, look at the last couple of years, there was no complaints about noise or odors. There were in the opposite. There were chickens that were, I guess, were getting out on the road, and maybe that's an issue too. But as far as what they were debating,
somewhere.
They come home to roost.
well, roadkill is roadkill, I guess. But as far as what they were debating several years ago, I think what Councilperson Lawson was saying is it was a matter of one or two families that had some real issues. And I'd go along with the thing of do your neighbors approve? But as soon as your neighbors change, then you may have to change your whole status. So I think 4 is fine for me. It's just me and my wife, and we're even with just 4, and they're old, which means we only get 2 eggs a day. But still, we're giving away eggs all the time. So I think when people talk about, well, maybe 12 chickens, unless they have 20 people in their family or something, I don't know how they're eating all those eggs, particularly if they're laying, as he was saying, 2 to 6 or up to 6 eggs a week, but per chicken. But that's just me. Anyway, thank you.
Aaron Mills had 5 kids, and 5 kids eat a lot of eggs. Eat a lot, that I know.
Go ahead.
I think I would be encouraged to send this back to planning and zoning for them to reevaluate it. I'm not sure I'd be wanting 12 today. I mean, I guess I got to find out people that live next to chickens and see what they like. I have an HOA that we can't have any livestock in our community, so we don't have chickens in our area. But I mean, I think doubling it initially would be the proper response, and then seeing how that goes. Maybe we can look at it in the future again. But I would definitely encourage the planning and zoning to go back through it.
I'm going to pass for this moment.
Angela.
My parents are neighbors of these lovely chickens, of the Powells, and then they have chickens across the street from the Powells as well. I can say, as much time as I spend over there, I've never once heard a chicken. I've never once seen a chicken. There is a chicken coop. It's cute across the house. I've not seen yours, but they've literally caused no issues at all, ever, for my parents.
When I drive down, why? It's on. When I drive down Y, I see chickens all the time. They're at the house from across Mr. Powell's, and there's more than 4 there in that yard. And their chicken coop, the ordinance says in the back, but it's on the side. And so people aren't following the ordinance now. So my trouble isn't that we add. My trouble is that we don't enforce. And whether it's chickens or other ordinances that we have. I have no chickens. I'm not going to have chickens. I don't care if Mr. Powell has 6. If you have 10. The issue is if there's an ordinance, we need to hold people to those ordinances. Or why have ordinances? Why have speed limits? Why have any of the other ordinances that we have? That's the only thing I have to say.
Mm-hmm. For any of those that have been to Key West, that's part of the charm of Key West is the roaming chickens around there.
They're everywhere in Key West.
It's kind of neat. I think it'd be good to review it again and let the planning and zoning come up with a plan.
Just going back to your point, or a couple points have been made about speaking to your neighbors. I think that's important. I think that's important for what we're always trying to do here. On my street, Sarah's house has chickens, the Mills has chickens, I have chickens. I spoke to my neighbors, the Minnises, they're an older couple, and I said, do you guys notice my chickens? Does it bother you? Would you be mad if we had more? Please tell me what you think. And they said, we don't mind at all. We don't even notice. I would encourage anybody that's considering getting chickens to know your neighbors and find out if they have a big aversion to it. That's just being neighborly. To your point real quick about code enforcement with chickens, that would be an animal control issue to enforce, not codes. Is that correct? Okay, if they're getting 12 calls a year just saying, hey, someone's chickens are out, not, I can see their coop in the side yard, I can see their chickens, why, I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't enforce our codes, but it just seems like there's not an issue, so they don't have time to go check coops because they're dealing typically dogs, cats, dangerous animals, and which the calls that you pointed out, most of them were that chickens had gotten out or had gotten attacked by another animal, which happened to me. My chickens were in my backyard, and 2 loose pit bulls came in and attacked one, and I didn't want to press charges for a dog doing what a dog would do. So, like anything, we just assume people are going to be reasonable and send up a prayer, I guess.
I guess my question to you, Chief, is Mr. Mills said that we don't allow roosters, but I think you said we allow roosters.
Yeah, we classify poultry, which could be either or.
Well, I think if we do change our ordinance, I'd like to make it where it's females only. Is that the right terminology?
Hens.
Chicks? Hens?
I do know that there is a rooster that's in, I think, West Belton, because I hear it when I walk in the morning.
I think I've had a call on a rooster out there, I think on Oakland or Richmond from a resident upset that we allow roosters, and I'm like, we allow them. I mean, but I think if we did anything, I'd grandfather the current roosters, but don't allow any more new ones.
Angela?
I'm sorry. I do remember through research that some people claim having the rooster increases egg production, but I don't know if that's true or not.
What's up, chickenologist?
I mean, if you're ready for this, that's not true. They lay on essentially a 24-hour cycle, and that's very dependent on food, water conditions, sunlight. They lay less during the darker months of the year, so having a rooster around wouldn't encourage egg production. Just like other mammals, they're on a kind of a set cycle.
Angela?
So my question goes back to rooster, because I know of a rooster that was taken by animal control before our current animal control officer. So it was obviously years ago, and that they were told it's not in the codes. Do we maybe have 2 different spots that roosters are discussed in codes?
I can check and see, but I printed off a document that I don't have it with me. But we only have like 8 ordinances that deal with poultry, and I don't remember any of those talking about a rooster.
I'm confused too. I thought it was rooster, and I've told everybody no roosters. I don't know where I would have seen that though.
There is no use of the term rooster in the entire Code of Ordinances or the Unified Development Code. Their only reference is poultry.
No hen. Does it say anything about hen?
Just poultry.
Well, I would suggest
No.
that we also specify no roosters because they are loud.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'd
Or charming, depending.
Listen to all this, I would support increasing the number 8 to 12. I mean, Dave mentioned 8 as a starting point, maybe to see how it goes. What? What'd you say? Oh, she's playing poker.
I would say 10 and specify no roosters.
Just crowing over.
And I'm okay with that too. I definitely think we need to do the no rooster thing, so I'm perfectly okay with that. Seeing as how there's no issues with chickens other than getting out on the street, but.
Does the city council prefer city staff to prepare a text amendment to the Unified Development Code similar to what occurred in 2015? Or does the city council just simply want city staff to amend the currently existing ordinance that just says 4 and amend that to a different number? So essentially it's do you want city staff to move the chicken regulations to the Unified Development Code like what happened in 2015, which would then cause a planning commission public hearing, public notice, and then for it to come back to the city council? Or alternatively, do you want city staff to just prepare an amendment to the existing code, which would not have to go to the planning commission and would just come back to the council?
Existing code. Option 2.
Yeah, what I saw in here and how the planning commission approached it, there's just, I think it made more problems. Not to say that I know more about this than anybody, but this doesn't really read like great policy, I guess.
I mean, my only issue with it going back to planning and not just amending a code is just having a public hearing, but I mean, if no one shows up, then it's just, I mean, I had a call It's probably been 2 years ago about a rooster. I haven't had any calls on anything lately, so.
There's actually a rooster down the road from our house, and he crows a lot, but it actually sounds kind of pretty. I don't mind him.
What's his name, Dave?
Yeah, he lives next to Dave.
You fell into that one, sorry.
We don't have any roosters.
I'd be okay with just changing the code.
Down that house down there.
Code.
I'm
Well, it's not only number, it's also no rooster, excluding rooster, right?
Yeah.
So just for 100% clarification, so that the ordinance that staff brings back, do you think there could be a motion directing city staff to prepare an ordinance allowing for 10 chickens, hens only in the city of Belton?
Yes,
But
Is that your motion?
motion.
10
Second.
hens.
All right, we have a motion.
I seconded it first.
Hold on.
We got a motion and a second. Now you can discuss it.
Now you can talk.
the way you worded that. The way you worded that would seem to allow a rooster.
Well, that's why Councilmember Lawson very quickly said hen, and I have adopted hen as the proposed motion. And I do believe that's reflected on the minutes.
But it doesn't exclude.
Well, yeah, you're not, but you also don't permit. If you change poultry to hen, a hen is not a rooster.
And other
But you're
poultry
not,
have
you're, someone can say, well, it's not written, so therefore it's okay. It's not saying I can and it's not saying I can't.
It just says hens allowed. I mean,
If all you're allowed to have is hens, you can't have a rooster.
Oh, we'll find that out.
And I will make sure to inform the whoever that is that it just does say hens, it does not say poultry.
I kind of agree with Brett in that regardless of what the code says or anything else, if you're a good neighbor and you're and your neighbor complains about your rooster crowing at 5 a.m., then you should be doing something about it. And that's how almost all roosters that I'm aware of got pushed out to a farm instead of in Belton. People are, and basically are nice neighbors. They're not necessarily reporting because they couldn't, because there wasn't anything that banned roosters. But if we codify it, say hens only, still there's going to be roosters out there, because if you go to Tractor Supply right now and you buy 10 and they say they're sexed and they say, oh yeah, there's a 90% chance that they're all hens. Well, I bought my first 6. Oh yeah, I broke the law. I bought 6 instead of 4, and and of the 6, 3 were roosters. So that 90% was way off the mark. But I was able to find farmers south of here that took my roosters. So I was down from 6 to 3, and now I'm back to 4. But anyway, it's more being neighborly, I think, than making officially down to, well, yeah, that guy has a rooster, even though he's not causing any problems. But
Angela.
So hypothetically, if we say no roosters and it is called in, does Wayside take roosters?
No.
Yeah, in that memo that I provided, we don't have any resources for that, so we would work with that person to find a farm or find some kind of service for them to donate that or transfer it.
I would think you'd have to grandfather the current roosters in. You don't want to.
But where do we know they're,
How would we know who has a
where
rooster?
they're at?
Well, that's true. The neighbors will tell you where they're at.
Yeah. All right, any more discussion?
Move for adjournment.
Seeing
There's a
none.
motion on the
The motion.
A motion on the floor.
Seeing none, all in favor of the motion on the floor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned. I gotta change that up, because we're not officially in anything.